Whether you are a fan of this game already or like Final Fantasy, this deck has a few surprises and maybe one or two you won't see coming. Hey everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be going over the new Final Fantasy deck Revival Trance. So if you don't know, I will be going over the commander, the sub-commander, the context of the deck itself, and then giving my thoughts and opinions and then a ranking at the end to see if this is worth buying or not. Now, placeholder, I have played a handful of Final Fantasy games, mainly being 7, 10 and 13, and I've never beaten one, so there's a lot of characters in the Final Fantasy world I do not know, and I'm probably going to get wrong when it comes to their name or anything like that. Unless they are like Cloud or a mainline character from like that era, I have no clue, so I apologize in advance. So now let's go into the actual video itself, breaking it down, starting off with the commander, and the commander of this deck is Terra Herald of Hope for a red, white and black. You got a legendary creature, human wizard warrior, that is a mythic, Trance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards, Terra gains flying until end of turn. Whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2. When you do, return target creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and choose a 3/3. I know nothing about this character, so I don't know if they're good or if they're bad. However, this seems to be a kind of graveyard recursion deck and self-mill, which is weird because there's usually green when it comes to this, so I don't know why green's not in here. Maybe because the character has nothing to do with that type of nature and stuff like that. But these colours do seem quite good. Red is really good for discarding stuff and then playing stuff later on, and if you then decide to not play it then, you'll be able to get it back with her ability. White has Suntying. I can put money on without looking at this deck that Suntying is going to be in this deck. That's plain and simple. Then there's black cards that are really good at getting rid of things and reanimating things. So I see the colours ready and be good for this already. I can see a lot of graveyard recursion, or a lot of things that mill, or a lot of things that they will go to the graveyard and they'll be able to be cast later on. I say this is going to be a very creature heavy deck, mainly because it's focusing on creatures. Now my only worry is that there's going to be kind of high level powered. Mainly I'll be thinking of low powered 3 or less, but again, when it comes to these decks, they don't really hard focus on that, so there could be 4 or plus cost creatures, and a fair few of them. But now that we've gone over the commander, let's go over the sub-commander of the deck, and the sub-commander is Celis Rune Knight. For 1 generic, a red, a white and a black, you get a legendary creature, human wizard knight, that is a mythic. When Celis enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards plus 1. Whenever 1 or more other creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from the graveyard or cast from the graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and it is a 4/4. Not gonna lie, I prefer this than the commander, but that's just more my playstyle. Be able to reanimate things, there's a lot of cards that you're able to cast, especially in black, from your graveyard, and the fact that everything gets a +1/+1 is really powerful. If you play your own curve and you're playing 2 or 3 creatures per turn from your graveyard because you discarded them at the start of your turn, she's getting +2/+3 each turn. Then never mind putting in cards that like give benefits with 1/1 counters or additional benefits with 1/1 counters and stuff. So again, I can see this, if someone got their hands on it, being a very powerful deck. But because this is a precon with cards for both commander and sub-commander, I will say it will be a little bit weaker, but again, precons are supposed to be like that. So now let's go on to the deck itself, starting off with the creatures in there. When it comes to the creatures of the deck, there's 36 of them, but there's only like maybe 28, 25 or something like that I want to talk about that are really good. I had a quick look through this and actually seen a fair few good cards, but you get creatures just like Siren Vengeful Samurai, General Leo Christoph, Interceptor Shadowhound, Shadow Mysterious Assassin, Segfried Famed Swordsman, Ghoul Feral Youth, Go-Go Mysterious Mine, Sabin Master Monk, Strago and Realm, Summon, Esper Valid Garmada, Argo Raging Yeti, Bannon the Returning Leader, Edgar Master Machinist, Kefka Dancing Mad, Locke Treasure Hunter, Mog Moogle Warrior, Setzer Wandering Gambler, The Warring Tride, Sun Titan, Arch-themed of Depravity, Sepulchral Primordial, Combustible Gearhulk, Flayer of the Hatehound, Rune Grinder, Priest of the Fell Rites, and Solum Ciliacrium. So, I know one Final Fantasy character, and I'm not sure if this is one. I know the Moguls, the little white fur cats with the little ball string from their heads, and that is it. I don't know any other from here. When I first started looking through these cards, I thought it would actually be good with the Wooburg Assassin's Creed card, or the card that lets you win if you've attacked with an assassin or something like that, that's popping someone out, or is it Samurai? Can't remember which one. A lot of the cards, I didn't have a clue, read through them and went, this is great for the deck, or roughly what it would be good for the deck. My biggest downside, and it's more, again, I will probably have to make a separate video on it, and I have made a video on this subject before, that Magic the Gathering is more going on this Universes Beyond and being less and less Magic, and I do find that every single Final Fantasy card having 2 or 3 arts, mainly if we even count the borderless one or the extended borders, is fine. But every single Magic the Gathering card in this deck only got, it did get a new art, but it didn't get an extended version as well, which in my eyes is more of a, I can see their plan for going forwards, that it's going to be less and less Magic and more Universes Beyond, which I'm not the biggest fan on, and I have made a video on that before. Plus also saying it now, the fact that they got rid of one set this year and moved it to next year, and it was a Magic the Gathering set, is kind of also another kind of red flag for me. But the creature lineup in general is very strong. There are solid value engines when it comes to the creatures in this deck, but it is held by a high mana curve. A lot of these creatures are not 3 mana less. But I can see this being a potential to start a very strong deck yourself, getting rid of a few cards, and I also said Sun Titan was going to be in this. Sun Titan's in every single deck they build. But next we are on the spells of the deck. If you don't know what spells are, it's the instant and sorceries. There's 15 of them in this deck, but the ones I want to mention are Esper to Mogsit, Bedevil, Rejoin the Fight, Snort, Tragic Arrogance, Reanimate, Rise of the Dark Realms, Legion of Ashes, Ruminous Ultimatum. So me joking earlier on that Reanimate is going to be in this deck. Usually I just use Reanimate as the best kind of card to put something in your graveyard onto the field. I didn't think they were going to reprint it in this deck, not going to lie. So that was a nice little kind of, not Easter egg thing there, but I was happy that I kind of said it and it wasn't here. Same with the Sun Titan. I do think the instant and sorceries are going to be probably one of the weakest points of this deck, but I do find a lot of the cards in here are shockingly actually better than I thought and have good really synergy with the deck, and the big ones being Rise of the Dark Realms, Reanimate and Ruminous Ultimatum was big hits that I found great to be in this deck. So now one thing I do want to mention, and this is a first. We're going on to the enchantments of this deck. When it comes to enchantments, I find enchantments to be one of the strongest cards in the game. Creatures are more powerful and there is more variations of them. However, when it comes to getting rid of them, it's easier than enchantments. Enchantments are usually the cards I put in if there is a creature version, mainly because it's going to be hard to get rid of if I put the creature version in instead. So enchantments are my favourite card type. Even though there's less of them, they're harder to get rid of and can be very, very powerful. And if you have a very powerful enchantment, people find it difficult to get rid of it. Where the creature, they can get rid of it with ease. There is a total of 0 enchantments in a pre-con. I'm fine if someone built their own deck and then put no enchantments in it because there's something in it. I have a deck myself that gets rid of artifacts and I have no artifacts in the deck. That makes sense. But having a pre-con with 0 enchantments in it, even though I'm pretty sure there is cards that let you bring stuff from the graveyard each turn, there's stuff that gives you benefits from putting stuff in your graveyard, and there is a lot of, especially black enchantments that are very powerful that will go well in this. Even with bringing stuff back, I know there's the one that lets you bring back something from a graveyard each turn and it's like 8 mana. that card would have been great. If there's any enchantments in here that you thought would be in this deck, let me know in the comments down below, because I'm quite disappointed that there is a total of 0. But now that that is out of the way, let's go on to artifacts. When it comes to artifacts, there is a total of 12, but 7 of them are mana rocks, so I don't want to kind of go through them. But there are a few I do, and they are Coin of Fate, the Falcon Airship Restored, and Key to the City. So this makes more sense why the artifacts are slightly better than usual, and the instant and sorcery is better than usual because there's no enchantments. Not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest fan of vehicles, but I can see them going more and more into vehicles. They just released a new rule that vehicles can also now be your commander, which I'm not complaining about. I do think it is a cool concept and will help the game grow even more. I do think this artifact or this artifact vehicle is quite good, but my main focus will be on the other cards. I do find Key to the City to be a very powerful card, but it depends on how you use it. It doesn't go in every deck, but I do think this deck is right for it. And then finally, usually the part that I dread, the lands. When it comes to this, there's 37 in total, but you get lands just like Clifftop Retreat, Desolate Mire, Dragon Skull Summit, Fetid Heath, Forge Bounding Ruins, Furry Calm Snarl, Graven Curry, High Market, Isolated Chapel, Rugged Prairie, Shadow Blood Ridge, Shrine Shadow Schnall, Smothering Marsh, Sun Scorched Divide. Now I'm not sure if this is a thing because there's no enchantments that they made the lands better. Usually when it comes to this, and I've made multiple videos, putting filter lands is good, especially in these type of things. I say for every colour added on after 2, you add 1 on. So for example, if you have a 2 colour deck, no filters to 1 filter is fine. Having a 3 colour deck, having 1 to 2 filters is fine, and then for 4 colours, -1, 2 to 3, and then for a Wilburg having 3 to 4 is fine. This has 3. Not complaining, that is really good. That is the direction I'm going, but I'm not sure if they're doing that because of their they have like a little balance sheet and they try and make a balance, and then with no enchantments they're like, okay, we need to make everything else that's slightly a bit better. And lands, this is probably one or very handful of times that the land base is good. I like it. There's not much change you have to do. It has cards that work well with the deck with high mark and stuff like that, and then there is the filter lands that work great. I love this already, and there's not much change I would do with the lands. To be honest, I think just changing the rest of the deck would be fine on its own. But now my thoughts and opinions on this deck as a whole. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's gonna be difficult to make this amazing or great, mainly because of how difficult it is with the IPs and stuff. They have to have a certain amount of characters, I assume, from the games into the deck. So having them and what they do is going to be difficult. Then they have to kind of balance that with balancing their own IP at the same time, while also doing that, balancing a good deck where a commander and sub-commander works well together with the creatures, enchantments and stuff like that in the deck. So it is hard for them to build. However, putting in Sun Titan again in every single white egg, this one does make sense because it's graveyard recursion, so this is the one that I would give more leeway on. I do find a lot of the cards are either really solid or bad. Another thing I don't like is that anything that's Final Fantasy gets a actual golden like treatment thing compared to its own IP. Again, with the getting extended border cards and different art, but not doing it for their own stuff. I know there is 2 variations of the deck. There's like pretty much the broke version and the expensive version, so I'm not sure if the art is in the extended art or different art is in the expensive one. However, I'm not the biggest fan of it. And then having a deck with no enchantments in is not good at all in my opinion. I do think it is very crammed for a short thing between the Final Fantasy stuff need to be done and then the deck itself need to be done. I find that they haven't fully balanced out how to make a good pre-con deck. They make good pre-con decks, but not amazing pre-con decks, which is fine. So I find it difficult with a second thing added on. The best way I can put it in is if there is someone that is constantly busy putting play on, and then someone asks them to do everything else then lowers, in my opinion. However, I can see Final Fantasy players buying this, but in fairness, that's going to be to all of it, and there's probably going to be a lot of new players that only buy this because they're huge into Final Fantasy, which again is a fine thing. But when it comes to my opinion of this deck, I'm basing it on kind of the cards' abilities, not the characters themselves, so it's nothing to do with Final Fantasy. The way they're treating kind of their own IP stuff, the way the deck is built and how powerful it can be straight off the bat, how many changes or what changes need to be done, and stuff like that. So the fact that the biggest and best thing about this deck is the lands shows where I'm probably aiming for this. But my overall grade for this is 6.8 out of 10. So if you think I've graded it wrong or you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments down below of what you would give it out of 10. If I've missed anything or anything like that, or wanted me to go over stuff, or if there's any synergy or cards that you think would go great in this deck, let me know in the comments down below. While you're there, remember to like and subscribe and do all that annoying YouTube stuff we always ask for. And as always, if you like this video, I have last week's video here, a playlist of Is It Worth It stuff here, and a subscribe button here. I'll be going over each deck each week, so I'll see you next week in the second deck. Have you ever had a deck that makes you feel like the main character? Yeah? This isn't it. It tries, it really does try though. Hey, I'm Joe ECJ, and in today's video I will be going over the Final Fantasy deck called Limit Break, showing you what's inside, give my thoughts and opinions on it, to overall see if this deck is worth buying for you. This is the second out of the 4 decks I will be going over, but if you're interested in the other 2, they will be coming out shortly. But just a quick little break before I go any further. I've got t-shirts and hoodies on sale now for people. If you like the weird stuff that I make and want to support the channel, grab yourself some merch and look cooler than a turn 1 Soul Ring. There will be a link down below. And now let's go back onto the video itself. So if you don't know what this deck is, it is a 3-colored deck that is red, green and white. Starring, and I do think the biggest sale point of this before I go even into the deck, is that Final Fantasy VII and the characters are the most known in Final Fantasy. So I say this is more of a kind of people fall in love with number 7 and the characters in it, that this is going to have majority of them in it, and people are more excited for the characters themselves than the cards and how the deck runs. So again, before I go into the full deck, if you like Cloud and Sephiroth and all them characters that even non-Final Fantasy players know and you want to buy this deck for that, go right ahead. This review is on the deck itself, the cards in it, the art in it and how it plays, not the characters. But talking about characters, let's start off with the commander of the deck, and that is Cloud X Soldier. For 2 generic, a red, a green and a white. You get a legendary creature, Human Soldier Mercenary, that is a mythic. Has haste. When Cloud enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to it. Whenever Cloud attacks, draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then if Cloud has power 7 or greater, create 2 treasure tokens, and he is a 4/4. So straight off the bat, I think this is going to be a very powerful commander. I usually go for 5 mana or less unless it has a broken ability, so I think the mana cost for the card for 4/4 with haste already is cool, with 3 colours that will easily get it up with 7 or more toughness. Unnatural Growth is one of my favourite cards, and already putting this in, that is 2 free treasure tokens because it comes in 8/8. Then this also refills your hand by putting equipment on it, plus it gets equipped itself for free whenever you play it. It is really easy to cheap out equipment, so you can put something in. Even if it's not the most powerful equipment, attaching it on to draw a card is really good. The one thing I like this deck is that it comes across as kind of like a Voltron deck, that you just want to put all the equipment on Cloud and then watch him absolutely destroy. However, you get benefits for sharing the equipment around, which is kind of like in the game, giving other people, your teammates and stuff, equipment. So I really do think this is a very powerful and good commander and is perfect for Cloud. But then with every commander there is a sub-commander in the deck, and the sub-commander of this deck is Tifa Martial Artist. For 1 generic, a red, a green and a white, you get a legendary creature, Human Monk, that is a mythic. Has melee. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control with power 7 or greater deal combat damage to a player, untap all creatures you control. If it's the first combat phase of your turn, there is an additional combat phase after this phase and is a 4/4. 4 mana for a 4/4 is okay, but I really do like the ability that whenever you attack multiple of your opponents, which is good because that's what you're aiming to do with the commander as well, she gets a +1/+1 until end of turn. But I'm not the biggest fan of the additional combat phase because they don't really do additional combat phase cards in decks. So this is more of, in my opinion already, if you buy this and want to play her, you would have to change a lot of the decks because there is kind of an imbalance. I do think just looking at the commander and sub-commander, the two main focus is going to be creatures and artifacts. Then probably low tier, I'm going to say enchantments, lands, and then sorceries. They might throw in an additional combat, other cards, but I say the hard focus is going to be on Cloud, which is fair. But if you want to play her, you would probably have to change a lot of the deck. But what is in the deck? Let's go through it. Starting off with the creatures. When it comes to this, there's 25 creatures in total, but you get great rares and mythics, just like Sid Free for Pilot, Elena Turk Recruit, Heidegger Shira Executive, Heli Trooper, Avalanche of Scout 7, Kit Sith Future Teller, Summon Kajuta, Vincent Vengeful Aterer, Ufi Materia Hunter, Bugenhagen Wise Elder, Professor Hojo, Aerith Last Ancient, Berend Avalanche Leader, Red XIII Proud Warrior, Sethra Fallen Hero, Bastion Protector, Bronze Guardian, Pure Steel Paladin, Hellkite Tyrant, Professional Facebreaker, Armory Automation. So as I said in the previous video, if you didn't watch it, I do mention that I'm not the biggest fan that the Final Fantasy cards get a normal art and an extended art, where if it is already a Magic card, it just gets a base art. But again, that's just me, and I'm not the biggest fan of the kind of universes beyond and how Magic's changing. But if you like that stuff, that is great and perfect for you. The card selection again does seem, in my opinion, quite good and a bit all over the place. I know I probably butchered a bunch of the names, but I've never fully played a Final Fantasy game. I've played like chunks of 3 of them, which I think is 7, 10 and 13. I could be wrong on 10. My actual username is based on VI, so again, that's a completely different video. I'm not the biggest fan of the deck creature-wise. I still have a lot to go on, but it does seem good when it comes to the character selection. I just think it's a bit difficult for this deck when it comes to the kind of 2 variations. You kind of want multiple combats with the sub-commander and then have swing wide with the commander, and I just find the selection of the cards and the weirdness of them just to be kind of all over the place. There's not kind of there is a structure, but it's a bit too wide of a structure for my liking. So let's go on to the spells of the deck. Already before reading through these, I think spells are going to be a little bit on the weaker side, but we'll go through them together. You get cards just like Cloud's Limit Break, Ultimate Magic Holy, Livestream Blessing, Clever Concealment, Chaos Warp, Austria Command, Unfinished Business, Vanquish the Horde, and Decimate. Straight off the bat, I usually give out, if there is usually a white pip and a bit of graveyard recursion, there's always a Sun Titan. I do find that Chaos Warp is the red version of that, so again, having Chaos Warp in here doesn't seem to be the best. I can see it used if you have something, like if you know something's on your top and you get one of your little guys, the ones you don't really care about, to try and get the power up to 7 or something like that. But I do think that Chaos Warp doesn't really have a place in it. It's just your generic good get rid of card that an opponent has. So I can see it good there. That's it. The rest of the cards are, to be honest, not really, I don't know how to explain it other than there's not that oomph. When it comes to this in the previous deck or in other decks I've seen, there's always kind of one section that is missing the oomph. That it seems to be kind of a bar, you know, the bar scales where it's different sizes of bars, that there's always one that's at the lower end, and I do think the sorceries are usually on that end when it comes to this. I do think there is a good fair few ones. However, I do think that so far the power of this deck is kind of low tier compared to what we've seen in the last few years. Mainly this seems to be the high kind of selling point is the kind of nostalgic towards it and having Cloud on him and stuff like that, where it seems to be more of a, because they knew it was going to sell either way, they kind of toned down the card selection and the power of the deck. So let's now go on to the enchantments of this deck, and just from this deck and the previous deck, they seem to be hating on enchantments when it comes to this Final Fantasy set, mainly not possibly the set itself, but the decks. There is a total of 2, and if there's usually 3 or less, I usually read out the cards, but the 2 enchantments you get in this deck are Soldier Military Program for 2 generic and a white. You get an enchantment that is a rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1. If you control a commander, you may choose both instead. Create a 1/1 soldier creature token. Put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 soldiers you control. For 3 mana this is worth it, especially if you can keep your commander on the field. If not, for 3 mana getting a free 1/1 each turn is really good, and then slowly powering it up is very good, especially for 3 mana. If you have your commander on the field, it is amazing because you get both. You get the soldier and then you get it powered up a little bit. I do think having a little bit of proliferation in this deck would go amazing. I actually think if you actually got Cloud and made a pure soldier deck, this card being in it would be one of the most broken cards in it. Furious Rise for 2 generic and a red, you get an enchantment that's an uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until you exile another card with this enchantment. I understand that this is a red ability. Personally, I'm just not a big fan of exiling cards and playing them later. I usually like to play a little bit more on the blue side and green side of I'm drawing a load of cards and I'm getting enough mana that I can play them right now. Playing them later on does seem a little bit of a slowdown for me, but I do have to admit, for 3 mana being able to get an extra card is amazing. I do think, personally, I think it should go to the graveyard so you can add this into, we'll say, black-red decks or black-red plus decks for graveyard recursion purposes. Other than that, I do think this is quite a good card. Now we're going on to the artifacts. There's 19 in total, with only 2 being mana rocks. But again, with the commander and sub-commander, I kind of guessed that there was going to be a large amount of equipment. Now a good chunk of these are just uncommon that are really amazing, like the boots and stuff. However, there is a handful I do want to mention, and they are Summoning Materia, Confirmer Shuriken, Wrecking Ball Arm, Champion's Helm, Conqueror's Flail, Dark Steel Plate, Inspiring Sanctuary, Sword of the Animus. There is a handful, especially Sword of the Animus and Dark Steel Plate, that I love. I think they are some of the most powerful equipment in this deck and some of the most powerful equipment as a whole. I love these equipment cards. My only thing I would be worried about is there's no really artifact kind of tutors or finding there. I think putting a little bit more in or putting a good chunk more in would be beneficial, mainly because if you want the Sword of the Animus to go fast, you have the entire deck to go through, where I do think putting in that's able to find it would be really, really good. I actually think that would probably make this deck amazing. Same with Dark Steel Plate and stuff like that. The rest of the equipment is good to amazing. There's no real bad ones. Again, when I mean bad, I mean knowing the deck and the price and how they kind of build it. There is cards that I'll be like, I wouldn't personally put in. I would put in these better ones, but I know they're probably the most like powerful, more kind of expensive artifacts like. So again, I understand why they are not putting it in. And then finally, usually the bit I worry about is the lands. When it comes to lands, there's 37 in total, but you get lands just like Bonder's Enclave, Canopy Vista, Cinderglade, Clifftop Retreat, Firelit Thicket, Fortified Village, Fury Calm Snarl, Game Trail, Mossfire Valley, Rootbound Crag, Rugged Prairie, Scavenger Grounds, Slayer's Stronghold, Sungrass Prairie, Sun Petal Grove, Sunscorched Divide. Lands are getting better. I really do like lands now. Usually when it comes to the deck, I'm usually like, oh, the lands suck, and for years I have been saying lands suck. They are on the right stage now. I think they are good, I think they're great, and of course it is in a time where I think, because of all the universes beyond stuff, Magic's not feeling like Magic, that I'm like, of course you pick up on the lands and make the lands better, when personally you're not giving magic anymore. Again, that is a completely different subject that I've done in a previous video. So I do think that it is good that the lands are up, and I do think that it is going to up the price of the deck to be if this is worth it or not. I do think overall, straight off the bat, if you are a Final Fantasy lover, buying all the Final Fantasy product is fair game, because again, I would be the same. There are certain collections, certain things that I just love and don't really care for the price. If I want it, I will try my best to get it. So on that stage, again, 10 out of 10, do whatever you want. However, when it comes to the deck itself, with power, card selection, art, and a few little other bits that I judge it on, I think this deck is really good, really powerful. I think if you want to play it, you can play it out of the box, but I say adding changes in it to more focus on the commander or sub-commander is going to be a really good idea. I like that this deck can be aggressive and hit everyone, and I do think that this has the potential to be not busted, but a very powerful deck. So overall, I could possibly give this probably a 7.5, but that's just me. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Is there any cards you would put in, or any characters from Final Fantasy that you would have loved to see in this deck? While you're down there, remember to like and subscribe and do all that YouTube stuff we always ask and annoy you for. And as always, I have the first Final Fantasy video here, a playlist of all the Is It Worth It Magic the Gathering stuff I make here, and a subscribe button here. Please watch more of my stuff, and I shall see you in the next video. There is just something about this deck that just makes me want to go, Hey, I'm CJ Okorjo, and today we are diving into the Final Fantasy deck called Counter Blitz. This is from a Final Fantasy focusing on one of the games. I think it's 9 or 10, correct me if I'm wrong. I have not played this one, I have played some Final Fantasy games. But in this, I'm going to be going over the commander, the sub-commander, the context of the deck to answer the question, is this deck worth it? When it comes to this, I'll be going over a lot of the cards, but I won't be focusing on the characters themselves, because I only know from this, especially, the main team you build around. There's a lot of Final Fantasy characters I have no clue about, so when it comes to this, it'll be the card itself, like its abilities and stuff like that, the variations of arts that come with it, and then just how powerful and how good this deck synergizes together. But before we jump into the cards themselves, I do need to do a little ad thing, which is my little store where I make t-shirts and hoodies for people to enjoy. They come with cool designs and are very comfortable, so if you like what I do, please go get yourself something nice. There will be a link down below for you to help out the channel. So now going back into the deck itself, starting off with the commander, and the commander of the deck is Tidus, Yuna's Guardian. For a green, white and a blue, you get a legendary creature, human warrior that is a mythic. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. Cheer. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn and is a 3/3. To be honest, I would love this to be green, red and blue, mainly because I think this would have gone really good in an Anima deck, and I love Anima. But yeah, he's all smiles, but don't let that fool you. This guy wants to spread counters like he's coaching a Blitzball team. His first ability lets you move counters from one creature onto another at the start of combat, which is very powerful because it's not just when people think counters, they always think of 1/1 counters. It is any form of counters. You play something that has a shield counter on it, you can move it onto your commander. You have something that gives a death touch counter or a lifelink counter, you can move it around to your strongest and biggest creature. That's what's really good about this, the fact that it's very good to synergize cards. Plus, it doesn't say that it can already have counters on it, so if you have a creature with 3 or 4 1/1 counters on it, you can keep putting 1/1 counters on that creature. To be honest, when it comes to this, I would be focusing on the different variations of tokens more than +1/+1. Also, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I haven't looked up the ruling or anything, but if you have 2 planeswalkers, are you able to put a loyalty counter from one of them onto another? But the second bit of it is probably where my favourite part of this card lies, which is in the cheer effect. Mainly because you get to draw, which is very good in Magic the Gathering, and then also proliferate. So again, if you move the 1/1 counter from one planeswalker onto another, you then get to proliferate it again, which is closer for it to ult. I really do like this ability because it's also beneficial because it kind of makes the deck more aggro and can scale faster. Which then also on your main phase 2, if you draw anything that gives additional counters or additional proliferate, is very good for this deck. Tidus awards smart board setup, synergizing creatures, and honestly, it's just kind of a fun play, and it feels like a puzzle that when you work it together with other cards can really pay off, and that's what I like when it comes to deck building. Now when it comes to itself, me being a nerd that likes kind of really anything, I have watched people's opinion pieces and the story of this Final Fantasy throughout the years, and I know the classic laugh and stuff, and I do know the story and how it goes, but I've just personally never played it myself. To be honest, I don't want to play Blitz because I heard it's a pain, but I also heard you can hide behind the gold circle. But then with every commander there is a sub-commander, and the sub-commander of this deck is Grand Summoner for 1 generic, a green, a white, and a blue. You get a legendary creature, Human Cleric, that is a mythic. Grand Summon. Tap. Add 1 mana of any colour. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of 1/1 counters on target creature, and is a 1/5. Usually when it comes to decks like this, there is a commander that does something and then a sub-commander that does something similar but are very different, that you can build it in 2 separate ways. But usually then the synergy is hard to do. I actually do think that this is very close. I do think when it comes to both of them, you can have the deck build roughly the same and then just switch out which one you want as your commander at the time, which is really good deck building in my personal opinion. I've seen people that have commanders in their deck, they have like 4 or 5 and they pick but leave the other 4 cards in their deck. They can just switch around depending on how they feel. So I really do like the synergy of the commander and sub-commander, but also that's how they're supposed to be like in the game. Tapping for 1 mana of any colour and then giving 2 1/1 counters onto the creature is very good, but it also says to me with the commander and the sub-commander that this is going to be a very creature heavy deck, which is fine, but it's just showing the focus on it. The one thing I kind of really like about this is the feel of you playing multiple creatures and then watching them die, protecting one as much as possible, for that when other creatures die, you then start stacking on the 1/1 counters onto the one big creature, which again is a very cool strategy. I really do like this. I did originally think maybe Graveyard Recursion would go well in this, however I do find that you kind of need her to tap. So having cards that when you play from your graveyard will not get the additional 1/1 counters made me think, no, this deck's actually really good the way it is. We didn't need to add an extra pip. I also think this goes very well in just the 99. If you have 3 color decks that can run her, I recommend running her in majority of decks like this because the payout is really, really good. So now let's go on the context of the deck itself, starting off with creatures. When it comes to this, there's a total of 35 creatures. Again, whoppingly going to be a lot because of the 2 characters we've seen. Where straight off the bat, I say a lot of these will have 1/1 counters and different counters and ways to benefit both the commander and sub-commander, but also at the same time can carry their own weight. Because these line up, I say this deck can ramp very fast. But if you have no clue what creatures are in this deck, you get creatures just like Oran Venerated Guardian, Chocobo Knights, Gata and Luzu, Lord Jaiskull Gudo, Summon Ixion, Summon Yojimbo, Lulu Stern Guardian, Owaka Travelling Merchant, Ryu Resourceful Guardian, Summon Veilfor, Master Seymour, Summon Magu's Sisters, Tommel Seymew's Butler, Shilinda Waven Arcalite, Sin Unending Cataclysm, Waka Devoted Guardian, Lumious Broodmouth, Scholar of New Horizons, Sunscorch Regent, Chasm Skulker, Bane of Progress, Forgotten Agent, Generous Patron, Gyre Sage, Incubation Druid, Rampant Rejuveant, Timeless Tracker, Altered Ego, Phantom Mage, and Walking Ballista. When it comes to this, I do find the creatures to be very solid. It's not just a power of value cards, which I really like. Most of them rather give 1/1 counters or award you for having 1/1 counters, or any other form of counters, or explode with the amount you get to proliferate. You get a lot of heavy hitters in this deck, which I really do appreciate and like. A lot of support pieces, which I do think goes really well, especially with the card draw from your commander, and it gives your handful on your board meaningful, with also a large amount of threats thrown on top. When it comes to the characters, there is a few I've seen and know of, but nothing that I know too deep about. But I do think, from someone who's kind of dipped their toes in Final Fantasy, this deck will be bought by a lot of people who are big fans of that game. And then Walking Ballista and Forgotten Ancients are just amazing cards to put into decks like this that can go off crazy amounts. You can kind of see from the creatures alone what the game plan is and stuff like that, which I do really appreciate, and it's literally built the deck perfect. There would be some changes I would put in, but that's just mainly because some of the cards I would probably put in would be a little bit more expensive, which again, I know this is a pre-con, so they won't do that. But secondly, we are on to the spells of the deck. When it comes to spells, there's 15 in total, but you get spells just like Protection Magic, Yuna's Whistle, Pull from Tomorrow, Endless Detour, Yuma's Decision, Collective Effort, Damning Verdict, Farewell, and Promise of Loyalty. Honestly, when it comes to a lot of counters moving around, stuff like that, I thought the spells would be weaker than this. There is Farewell, which is one of the most powerful spells in the game, and it's very, very popular, but also has some new cards that are also really cool. I do like this, and I do think a lot of the focus is based on the story, especially with the 2 Yuma cards, but I do appreciate when it comes to that little kind of storytelling when it comes to the deck. There's probably a little bit more better draw, in my opinion, that could have been put in, but to be honest, the hard focus isn't on the draw, so I do understand why Pull from Tomorrow is the only kind of draw card here. But to be honest, I'm more happy that there isn't like a Swords to Plowshare or a Sun Titan when it comes to this, so I'm happy with the way this deck is being built. So with that, we're going on to enchantments. When it comes to enchantments, there is 9 in total, which is shocking because the other 2 decks had none and very few, so it's good to see that there's actually some enchantment love in this Final Fantasy deck set. But you get enchantments just like Summon Ascending, Sphere Grid, Resourceful Defense, Together Forever, Inexorable Tide, Fight Ring, Hardened Scales, and Path of Discovery. I do think Hardened Scales is pretty much a must when it comes to the Commander and Sub-Commander, but the rest of the enchantments were very pleasing and also very good cards. It also adds consistency, value, and then a steady advantage that your opponents will struggle with. My only thing, and I hope they do this, but I know they haven't, is Fight and Ring with Hideaway, but I do think Hideaway is a very good thing for this deck. Kind of cheating out stuff with Hideaway abilities would have been good, so I do think adding in the 3 Hideaway lands, or at least the green one, would have been a really good option, but spoiler alert, they did not do that. So now that that's done, let's go on to the artifacts of the deck. When it comes to the artifacts in this deck, there is 4, but there's only one I would like to talk about, and that card is Blitzball Stadium. For X and a blue, you get an artifact that is a rare. When this artifact enters, support X. Go for the goal for 3 and tap it. Until the end of turn, target creature gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player. Draw a card for each kind of counter on it, and it can't be blocked this turn. This card, in my opinion, is hilarious. The first thing that popped into my head was adding a Golter into this deck. I love Golter. Paying for Golter and then paying for this to put even one 1/1 counter on it, then putting a Death Touch, Lifelink, Shield counter on it as well, then doing a large amount of damage that's unblockable, then drawing a load of cards. This, in my opinion, is absolutely hilarious and also would be really good in an Anima deck if you're able to put other counters on it as well. Making your commander unblockable is hilarious, and then drawing a bunch of cards from it. So I really do like this, but I also know that when it comes to the Blitzball Stadium itself, not the card, people do rather love Blitzball or hate Blitzball. So let me know which one you actually prefer in the comments down below. And then finally, to wrap this all up, we are on to the lands. When it comes to this, there's 37 lands in total, but you get options just like Canopy Vista, Flooded Grove, Fortified Village, Glacial Fortress, Hinterland Harbour, Overflowing Basin, Port Town, Prairie Stream, Skycloud Expense, Sungross Prairie, Sun Petal Grove, and Vine Glimmer Snarl. A lot of these are great fixes, a lot of these are great cards. I love the filter lands. Again, filter lands are probably my favourite lands of all time, and I do think they are doing a lot better when it comes to putting lands in these type of decks. I don't have any complaints when it comes to the lands as a whole, but I do think putting in the hideaway lands for this deck would have been good, or at least the green one. Maybe putting in a land or two that could potentially give 1/1 counters. I know there is a few bad green ones that do it, like I know there's one that if you tap it, you get to put a 1/1 counter on a creature that enters this turn, but you don't get to add a mana for it. So again, you're paying one of the lands extra to put an extra 1/1 counter on it. Or there's one with gift that it has a 1/1 counter on it and you're able to gift it onto another thing. Cards like that might have been a little bit funny, especially if they made a Final Fantasy variation of it. So my thoughts and opinions on this deck as a whole, and then I'm going to rank it. So right off the bat, not as a Final Fantasy player all over a Final Fantasy, just as a deck itself, I do like the Commander and Sub-Commander. They are very powerful. I do like a lot of the creatures, they are very beneficial, and a lot of annoying cards that people do enjoy in this game. The artifacts, in my opinion, are the weakest point, but come with a very strong artifact, so I'm not going to complain there. Then enchantments are better than the other two decks, and then the spells and sorceries are quite good for what you're getting. Lands are quite good, very good, are doing in the right direction, but in my opinion, out of the 3 decks I have recorded, probably the weakest out of the 3. A lot of 1/1 counters, a lot of synergy, and a lot of good ability this deck has. So overall, I would give this possibly an 8.6. But if you think I'm wrong, let me know what you would give it down in the comments down below. And tell me why you gave it that kind of grade. While you're down there, remember to like and subscribe and do all that YouTube stuff we always annoy you for. And as always, if you like this Final Fantasy deck review, I have last week's here, a playlist of all the is it worth it stuff I make here, and a subscribe button here, and I shall see you all in the next video. So my next door neighbours are playing music, so I will try my best to get rid of it. So if you hear any weird background noises, it's just that. But let's get into this video. Have you ever built a deck so magical that even the Scions were like, yeah, we'll allow it? No? Well, let's see if this deck lives up to this spell slinging hype. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going through the Scion and Spellcraft from the Final Fantasy set. Is it packed with value? Is it packed with fun? And most importantly, is it worth your gil? In this video I'll be going over the commander, the sub-commander, and the context of the deck, showing you is this worth it overall. Leading the Scion and Spellcraft deck is Yolster Knights Blessed. For 1 white, blue and a black you get a legendary creature cat warrior that is a mythic. Has vigilance. At the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, your Stola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. and is a 2/4. This commander brings balance and aggression, spell synergy and draw. A commander with vigilance is always really good. She always stays ready on the defense even when she attacks. And her ability to help you draw cards already is really good for the second ability because you're already halfway there for just casting cards. This is the type of deck that just wants to chip away slowly at everyone, having a large amount of cards that are non-creature. But the best part of this commander is the last bit of its ability. Each time you cast something that's 3 or more mana, everyone gets hit by 2 and then your life goes up by 2, which is really good in my opinion. Which is constant value if you're then playing and ramping and playing 2 or 3 of these spells per turn. It's constant value that drains your table while also keeping you alive. She's a really good commander for spell slinging strategies, with also kind of a flavour of aristocrats. Personally, I would more go towards enchantments, but that's just because I am an enchantment lover, playing a bunch of casting enchantments or making tokens and stuff like that, or you could just go straight to drawing more cards, doing a little bit of damage, and all of that stuff. There's multiple different ways you're able to play this commander. But backing up the commander is the sub-commander, who is Grahatiha, Scion Reborn. For a white, blue and black, you get a legendary creature cat warrior that is a mythic, has lifelink. Throw wide the gates. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay X life, where X is the spell's mana value. If you do, create a 1/1 colourless hero creature token and put X +1/+1 counters on it. Do this only once each turn and is a 2/3. This lifelink wielding cat wizard rewards you for doing what the deck does already, casting powerful non-creature spells. The only difference is, personally in my opinion, I think this is better for just playing really big spells and just getting one really big hero, but the other one is better casting 3 or 4 costs, but playing 2 or 3 per turn or more if you can. The second part of the ability does make you pay life equal to the cost, however, with how easy it is to get lifelink, it's more of an investment in my opinion than a bad side. You're pretty much going, cool, I'm going to play this 10 cost, really big, powerful spell, and then lose 10 life. However, this really big spell puts like 10 1/1 counters on my commander, I attack, that's 12 life. And now I have this like really cool, like powerful commander card. That's if you're using the sub-commander as your commander. The main reason I think casting a really big spell and getting a really big hero is mainly because you can only do this once per turn. So he is a little bit of a gamble, trading life for board presence. However, pairing it with the commander makes it very balanced and beautiful overall. Personally, the way I play, I prefer the commander over the sub-commander, but I can see a lot of people playing the sub-commander and making really powerful decks with it. Before we dive into the rest of the deck, here is a quick reminder though. If you like what I do here on the channel, you can support me directly by looking at my t-shirts and hoodies. They are comfortable, they look awesome, and they help me keep making more videos like this. You will find a link down in the description below. But now back onto the deck itself. Starting off with the creatures, of course. When it comes to this, there's 23 creatures in total, which is mainly here to be a support and give a backbone to the deck, which will help with the spell slinging and the synergy of it. But when it comes to this, you get cards just like Altia Leveler, Summon God King Mog X11, Tataru Taru, Thancred Waters, Alfind Leveler, Herms Overseek the Alps, Resenver the First Brood, Fendinal Temporin Askin, Ardbert Warrior of Darkness, Emerslet of the Third Seat, Estin Varalu, Helibrand Mordeville, Krill Bladeson, Lynch Hex, Papal Maw Totemlo, Uriango Walterlet, Archmage Emmetus, Torrental Gearhulk, Mordorous Rider, Belful Strix. So first I want to say sorry for butchering half them names, but the creatures in this deck make it very structured. When it comes to this, it's not trying to overwhelm the board with bodies. Instead, all these creatures are meant to give you value that either support your non-creature spells, generate tokens, or scale over time. The main thing I like about this is how these synergize with both your commander and your sub-commander, whether it's to create tokens, to pump up, or trigger damage or life gain. You're not just jamming creatures. You're casting pieces of a much bigger machine, because in all decks there's pretty much going to be creatures, or majority of them. So again, having a full Spellslinger deck with no creatures is weird, but I do like what these creatures do to help out. This deck is not a swarm strategy, it's more like fine-tuning a giant machine to win the game, and each creature has its own place in that machine to help you win. But now that the creatures are done, let's go into the enchantments. This deck includes a total of 6 enchantments, which again is good because the first 2 decks had none to barely any. These enchantments offer a balance of unity, defense, and synergy with your commander and sub-commander. And if you haven't looked through the deck list, here are some of the enchantments on screen now. Champion from Beyond, Observant Status, Eye of Needhog, Authority of the Consuls. These enchantments are very heavily into control and value, with one of my favourite cards, Authority of the Council, that just slow down your opponent, giving you time to build and manage your machine, while also helping you stay alive long enough to be able to fully finish it. And then there's the 2 new cards that are involved to push your strategy even further, one locking down things, and then the other one pushing your opponents over time. Altogether, these enchantments aren't just nice, they feel like a critical support piece to help your deck function the way you want it to do. But next are the artifacts of this deck. When it comes to the artifacts of the deck, there are 16 of these in total. A good chunk of these are for ramp, of course, that's what most artifacts when it comes to these decks are. Card draw, and then support pieces tailored for spell heavy gameplay. But you get enchantments just like Dancer's Crackums, Blue Mage's Cane, Astral Goligan's Planespear, Reaper's Scythe, Archromancer's Mat, Confident Jewel, Tome of Legends. These are great enchantments for a pre-con. You've got a mix of cards in here, some are good for acceleration, drawing, and then thematical flavour. When it comes to this, I think this more leans towards the sub-command, because the deck wants you to cast big creatures while also keeping your mana flowing. And these artifacts make it happen between ramp, interaction, and then just plus that little bit of flair. This package supports your game plan without overshadowing your creatures or your enchantments. It is a perfect toolbox to keep your hand full, your board ready, and then also your commander online. And then the biggest part of the deck, in my opinion, the spells. There is a total of 18, with 8 of them being instances and 10 of them being sorceries. These are all carefully selected to support removal, control, draw, and synergy with your commander's abilities. But when it comes to the spells, you get cards just like Transpose, Dig Through Time, Sublime Empathy, Lethal Scheme, Void Render, Cleansing Nova, Final Judgment, Rite of Replication, Crux of Fate, and Vindicate. The spells is where the deck really shines. Every time you're casting pretty much any of these, you are triggering the commander, or the sub-commander, or both, depending on which one you picked, or what's on the field. One thing I like about this is all the spells feel tuned towards the commander and not just the theme, with most of these spells being 3 or more mana, which perfectly aligns up with your commander's ability. But if you like casting big spells, then this deck is perfect for you because there is a lot of them. And then finally we're going on to the lands of the deck. When it comes to lands of the deck, there is 37 in total. A lot of these cover a wide base of lands like duals and utility lands, all fine-tuned for this 3 mana base. You've got strong fixes just like Choked Estuary, Darkwater Catacombs, Desolate Mire, Drowned Catacombs, Fettered Heath, Glacial Fortress, Isolated Chapel, Port Town, Prairie Stream, Scavenger Grounds, Shine Shadow Snarl, Sky Cloud Expense, Sunken Hollow, Sunken Ruins. So I have been noticing that the mana base of these decks have been improving, especially in precons. When working with Esper, it can be very tricky, but the lands and the artifacts give you just enough mana, in my opinion, for what you need for this deck to do without doing any changes. But definitely leaves room for you to improve the deck if you choose to. Overall, I think the lands in the deck give you a strong basis, to make this deck really good straight off the bat. But I also think this deck is perfect for you to put the cost in to bling out your deck or make it even more powerful. So now my overall thoughts when it comes to this deck as a whole. As a precon, it is very tight and flavorful. I don't know much about Final Fantasy, but they do seem to have a lot of cool characters in it that a lot of Final Fantasy players may know. I am a lover of a Spellslinger deck, so this is one of my favourite decks out of the 4, and it was one that I was actually considering buying. I like when commanders reward you for casting your spells, or you can just make a really big army with the sub-commander. I think just as a precon as a whole, it is one of the better ones, and I do think they should continue and start doing stuff like this more often. I like how this deck doesn't rely on pure power, it is just a bunch of cards that work well together. It's kind of like a giant puzzle piece that you can put together to see the final picture, which is you winning the game. Every section of this deck has its own unique purpose to make the final product work well. And of course, with every deck there is going to be upgrades, or if you want to hard focus on the commander or sub-commander, taking a bunch of cards out and putting in ones that work better with the chosen one you picked. But it also feels like there's not much change needed, just a few little cards would make it work the way you want it to. If you're ever considering a Spellslinger deck, I prioritize getting this. It is quite powerful for a precon. Overall, I will give this a 9.1. But if you were going to build this deck, how would you build it, and would you focus on the commander and sub-commander? If you were going to build this deck, how would you build it, and would you focus on the commander or the sub-commander? If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like and subscribe and do that annoying YouTubey stuff we always ask for. And hey, if you want to support out the channel, my Etsy is down linked below, where you can buy yourself nice t-shirts and hoodies and look really cool while playing Magic or Pokemon. And if you like this, I have the previous 3 Final Fantasy decks here, a playlist of reviews and is decks worth it here, and a subscribe button here, and I shall see you all in the next video.